not a lot of my family, as it doesn't practice their faith or wouldn't even call themselves Catholic. But it's something that has always been, like I said, important to me. It's helped me get through a lot of those trials, and only grew when I went to college, which I think is unique because a lot of times people lose their faith when they go to college. But mine definitely deepened.
Why do you think that is? You weren't like living at home, like you moved away. At college, playing sports, like. Yeah.
I think some of it's stubbornness, which is kind of weird, maybe. But a lot of people would make fun of the way I was living. You know, like trying to not sleep around or trying not to get drunk at parties. And people say, "Oh, like you can't do that." Basically, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So, to be completely honest, for a lot of it, I was like, "Yeah, I can."
Yeah. I'll show
and like,
you.
I'm gonna just prove to you that I can.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, once I set my mind on something. Like I'm a goal setter, so I set my mind to it, I accomplish it. That's how I do, bottom line. And so basically that happened, and then as I set my mind, like kind of that stubbornness just not to do wrong, then I like started to fall in love with it. I think it's actually reminds me of something I had learned in an ethics class after the fact that I was able to connect. Aristotle, he writes in one of his works on the Nicomachean Ethics, it's just the ethics for his son, that like virtue has to start with self-control. So you like stop yourself just because you know it's wrong, and then over time you actually learn to love it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that kind of makes sense, because like honestly, it's like why don't you drink? And I'm just like, I'm not going to. Like, and it was like not like so much like for the glory of God, but like I'm gonna do it because you said I can. Yeah. And then like it became like, oh, like when I'm not drunk at the party making terrible decisions, like this is enjoyable. Yeah. And same thing with. Like I said, with purity and with other parts of congratulations. Thank you. He's one of the owners of the flower shop, and he comes to the coffee shop all the time. He said, "Congrats on the engagement."
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, so it was just pretty cool how over time God took my hard-headedness, like my hardness of heart, and actually like helped me to form kind of a new heart, so to speak, to use that famous Ezekiel quote.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of people's like beginning faith. Like a lot of people would just start being terrified of hell, and so like, all right, I'm not gonna like screw up, so I don't go to hell, which is not like the best reason, but it's realistic. You don't want to go to hell. All right, we'll live a good life, but then like the goal is to eventually build virtue and love of God and love of neighbor, and like that's why you decide to live like the way you are.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of funny, but like that's how I am. Like if you're like, you could never run a marathon. I'd be like, yeah, I will, and like I'm gonna run. Like that's just, and so faith became something like I started to embrace the challenge of it, because it's hard. Being a Christian is hard. Being a Catholic, especially with with scandal, with a lot of the issues in the church, right? Obviously, it's the human side of the church, but it makes you, like I said, it never made me question God, but it makes me question the church, right? Like, do I really want to go to this church or do this? And it's always been my stubbornness, like, well, I'm going to be the person to change it. I'm going to do it, like, because that's what I do. Yeah. And it's kind of the challenge that I've learned to embrace that's made me love my faith.
Since we went down that road, what about like recently, especially since the summer, have you had issues, or have you had like just like personal difficulties, whether in like prayer or work, or maybe even challenges from people or teens just about the scandal in the church, and like, what are we doing?
Yeah, one thing that I first thought was maybe unique to my parish, but they're talking to other ministers, was teens have not really brought it up at all, nor do they seem concerned. And my teens will bring hot button issues to my attention. They'll bring this stuff to my attention, but it doesn't seem like much of a concern. It
hasn't come up for us either.
Yeah, and that's pretty much across the board from the ministers I've talked to. Now, I've addressed it briefly because I'm also not going to dwell on it, because it's not what our faith believes or thinks is okay. So I basically say, hey, this is what happened. What these people did was criminal and sinful and needs to be eradicated from the church. But that's not who we are. And so we kind of go from there. My model at my parish, and again, this is just what I use, so maybe isn't for everybody, but is, hey, I can only control what we have going on at the parish. So our pastor is a phenomenal pastor. Our ministry program is growing, and our kids are really on fire. So I'm like, if there's crazy stuff going on in the surroundings, I say, hey, let's just focus on us, because that's what we can control, and we're doing a good job. So that's how I view it. So issues, scandals, if that happened at the neighboring parish, like, I'm sorry, I will pray for them, I will help them in any way that they need, but like, I can't control it, so I'm not going to lose sleep over it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.